All right, let me try to summarize this for everybody as you've been paying attention or maybe weren't paying attention, because there was a lot of numbers and a lot of information thrown out there. I think the mayor does a really good job as a communicator. I really do. And I think the way she described it actually was the most concise. But basically, we now have an agreement between the team and, of course, the city. Attending this press conference today were Josh Harris and the mayor and the commissioner of the league, Roger Goodell. As I mentioned earlier in the show, for those that don't know, Roger Goodell grew up here because his father was in government, and he went to RFK and went to Skins games at RFK. In the crowd were Dan Quinn and Adam Peters and John Riggins and Daryl Green and Doug Williams. I'm sure I'm missing a few. I think Mark Seagraves mentioned, or somebody did, four of the current 12 council members were there. And you heard, occasional references and thanks to them in advance of what they hope the council will do, which is approve this deal. So overall, this is basically, as the mayor laid out, a $3.6 billion project to not just build a stadium, but to totally transform this 180 acre blighted parcel of land on the banks of the Anacostia River. This will be the largest single investment in the city's history to do anything. The stadium that will be built will be a 65,000 or so seat stadium that will be what they call roofed, not domed now, it's roofed, but it will be an indoor stadium. This is something we've talked about for a while, but that is an absolute given. And the reason that's a given is because they want to be able to maximize year-round usage of the facility. They want to be able to get a Super Bowl to DC. The commissioner was actually asked about the Super Bowl by John Keim, and he said, what are the odds? And he said they have increased dramatically, which they have. Within 10 years, we're going to have a Super Bowl in DC. 2032, 2033 Super Bowl in DC. So, $3.6 billion project in which the team is fronting $2.7 billion of that $3.6 billion investment. Now, the rest of it is made up with, $500 million towards infrastructure from the actual city itself. All right, the $500 million, they talk about horizontal infrastructure towards stadium development. That's apparently money that they already have. In what did she call that fee? It's leveraging dedicated funds from what they call the sports facilities fee. So the district doesn't need to make any cuts from the city's operating budget. This will all be included in what she called FY26, fiscal year 2026. So DC's government's going to invest $500 million for stadium horizontal and non-vertical costs, but they don't have to do anything. That money is there. The district will facilitate parking development using a $175 million bond, which will be funded by what they call in-stadium activity once the stadium is operating. So that will be a mix of things, which, by the way, will probably include PSLs to some degree, personal seat licenses. Get ready. I'm telling you this right now. It's okay, because I think there will still be demand and we're 5 years out, but it's not going to be a cheap ticket. Now, maybe once you get the season ticket portion done, depending on how good the team is, you'll be able to get in on the aftermarket for something that isn't super expensive. But PSLs, personal seat licenses, give you the right to purchase the season tickets. Ain't going to be cheap. Events DC is going to contribute $181 million for parking garages near the area. And then the district will invest $202 million for utilities infrastructure, roadways, and some sort of transit study. In addition, $89 million will be invested in a sportsplex, meaning fields and sports recreational usage next to the stadium. There's going to be, what's it going to look like around the stadium? Well, there's going to be several areas around the stadium. There's going to be a plaza where you have entertainment, festivals, etc. There's going to be a riverfront area for housing, retail, restaurants, etc. There's going to be a residential district, which will include a significant percentage. I think I read in the press release, 30% of affordable housing. And then that expanded recreational area where $89 million will go towards like a sportsplex with fields, etc. So 3.6 million with the team putting up 2.7, and the rest, the other $900 million roughly, put up by the city with current funds through partnerships with groups like Events DC and through taxpayer dollars. So what are the next steps? The next step is to get the city council to approve it. I can tell you that they need to move quickly. She had mentioned at one point that they needed to move quickly on this thing because they needed to know whether or not they needed to move on from this. And the team certainly needed to know whether or not they needed to go back to Maryland and move into something that could get them into a new facility by 2030. When will the city council vote on this? It's a good question. I don't know, but I would imagine it's got to take place in the next few months. You heard the mayor at the end there. I mean, she's got her pitch down. This is not about costs. This is about future jobs and revenue. Of course, that's the pitch. Now, where all of that future revenue comes from is consumers, from residents, and from things like whatever the stadium generates on game day or event day. I did not think we got an answer to personal seat licenses, but the majority of NFL stadiums do include personal seat licenses. I'm trying to think of where I read this morning, but I think I read that 20 of the 32 teams have them. And by the way, what they do is they dramatically increase the price of being a season ticket holder. You know, that cost can go from anywhere from like $1,500 to $6,000 or something like that. You know, and for premium, and that would be general admission seats, and for premium seats, much higher than that. The other thing we did not get, or we haven't gotten because we did cut out of there, but we'll find out at some point, is whether or not the team itself will relocate to that facility. I don't think they will because they didn't announce that. I wonder if their training, their headquarters will remain in Ashburn. Remember, they own a lot of land now in College Park. So that kind of sums it up. I think. I'm sure I'm missing some pieces. But if you want to weigh in, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. I think all of these things, typically when they get bogged down by people who don't understand revenue, and they're more fixated on costs. They're more fixated on costs to their constituents. Understood. They're in politics. But this is a big area of the city that currently is massively underutilized. And I'd love to see all of the detail about the projected revenue. I think I did read in the press release, it's a press release, that this thing will generate, $4 billion plus, so it'll return. And you heard Josh Harris, talk about the ROI on something like this. Sometimes it takes more advanced business people and bigger thinkers to get things like this done, but they have to be effective in communicating to people who may be less apt to understand the upside to things like this. Josh Harris is used to that, and the mayor is used to that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I thought it sounded, well done and well communicated, especially by Mayor Bowser. I don't know that that's Josh's strength, but he did a good job there today as well. His strength is building winning things, winning businesses, and already after a year and a half, a winning football team that may be on their way back to DC, something that just flat out was not going to happen as long as the last owner, who was not very good at doing things, remained as owner. Fortunately, that didn't happen. All right, 301 230 0980, 301 230 0980. Let me just see if there's anything else in my notes that I wrote down here of interest. One thing that Josh Harris and Mark Ein and Mitch Rales, they have referred to RFK as the franchise's spiritual home. It's going to be a new home. It's going to be a new team. I mean, there are a lot of things that have changed about this team. That's the massive weight, that was not going to be addressed today and won't be addressed because Josh Harris kind of already addressed it a couple of months ago. But a new stadium, in terms of what that means for the team moving forward, I think it's a very good thing. And I think, Roger Goodell mentioning a new generation is really, I think, the most, important part of the whole mindset of new ownership, even though I'm watching this stage and I know I would bet big money that certainly Josh Harris and Roger Goodell probably think it's silly that the team lost its name and would rather that name exist. I have no idea how the mayor feels. But the issue is over. I mean, I know we had the president address it last week, but this is about future revenues, and the people that are the future spenders for this football franchise and for the stadium and the area surrounding the stadium. It's less of an issue, much less of an issue for them. And in some cases, it won't even be thought of as an issue for many of the fans that attend events at that stadium, games included.